Welcome to night number 27 of History Bedtime Stories in bed in our pajamas. We're talking about FDR's WPA. Now, the WPA is put in place by executive order from President Franklin Delano Roosevelt. I got out my old political buttons. I collect original campaign buttons for different American presidents. Now, FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, puts in place by executive order the WPA, which originally stands for Work Progress Administration. It's renamed in 1939 Work Project Administration, so you may see it both ways in academic writing. Now, the WPA's purpose was to give every American head of household who had lost their job during the Great Depression a paycheck, to get them to work building things that the American infrastructure needed. Roads, schools, parks, pools, post offices, and playgrounds all were constructed during this time by 8 million WPA workers. Now, the WPA was not universally popular. In fact, some people didn't like it. They thought it was a way of getting communism into America. There was a big debate about if it was politically driven and if projects were given to certain areas like the American South because Roosevelt wanted to sway voters in those regions. There was also a discussion that the WPA could make workers lazy. It could give them poor work habits. But in its biggest year, 1938, it employed 3.5 million people alone. And over the course of its tenure, it gives 8 million Americans employment. It also built hundreds of miles of road, dozens and dozens of post offices and schools. And there's not a city in America today that doesn't boast at least one WPA project. Here in Detroit, we're incredibly lucky. Some of our roads were actually built by the WPA. This is an image from the Detroit News Archives of a road being built by Jefferson Avenue and Clark Avenue intersection. Women were also part of the WPA. Among its many unskilled workers, they had the Household Services Demonstration Project. It employed 30,000 American women, training them for domestic jobs like maids and nannies. It taught them to cook, simple sewing, and cleaning. You also had women who went to work in sewing factories, like this one on Jefferson Avenue in 1939. You had women doing sewing projects to make gowns, sheets, and bandages for local hospitals. And those funny hats they're wearing, it's for sanitary reasons because everything they were making had to be sterile. The WPA also employs skilled labor, what we would call artists. Federal Theater Act, Federal Writers Act, Federal Music Act, and Federal Art Act all give money to the WPA to support out-of-work artists. This gets murals put into thousands of schools across America and places like the Hamtramck Post Office, which has this amazing mural done by Shomer Littner in 1837. And outside of the Highland Park Post Office is the American Eagle, completed in 1940 by Edwin Springweller. These artists are part of the Visual Artist Act of the WPA and are supplied with stipends for creating this artwork for public consumption. You also have theater. In 1936, the WPA sponsored this project. Done at the Lafayette Theater, it shows a stylized photo of Adolf Hitler, and it is a play called It Can Happen Here by Sinclair Lewis. You have groups like the Detroit Orchestra. They formed the WPA Orchestra of Detroit, and under Otto Kurig, their conductor, performed free in parks and for Detroit school children, like you can see in this photo, courtesy of the Detroit News Archives. Female musicians were hired to transcribe sheet after sheet of music. Orchestras, bands, collegiate marching bands, civic programs, and even the DSO were given this sheet music of great masterpieces for free and still maintain them in their collections to this day. Among all of the projects done by the WPA, hundreds and hundreds were in Detroit. Michigan boasts over 330 projects completed by the WPA that we're thankful to have to this day. Ends as World War II begins. High-paying factory jobs really start pulling WPA workers into their factories, and the need for the WPA sort of disappears. As it disappears, federal funding is cut. But for the 7 years of the WPA, 8 million workers, it really is a true civic work project that America can be proud of. We will catch you tomorrow night at 8. We hope you're enjoying History Bedtime Stories. If you want a chance to win a whole bunch of stickers during our Make Work project of quarantine, tag a friend down in the comments and share this video. We'll pick a winner on Thursday. See you guys tomorrow night. Wash your hands.